So my name is Leah O'Donnell. I am a clinical social worker. I'm a therapist in private practice. I do psychedelic guiding work and psychedelic integration. And I am a student of life and of love. Much of my journey has been around understanding human and understanding love, understanding the things that get in the way of love, of expanded states of love, the places we bump up against that feel like discomfort. So we have to grieve the love that we had been accepting at a lower level before, and stuff like that. So I'm happy to be here and share with you what I've learned and continue to learn. And okay, welcome everybody. Leah O'Donnell. I'm a therapist, student of life and love, and trying to figure this all out. And I'm excited to be with you all here today. I will preface this by saying I don't have all of these things perfect. I screw them up all the time. I get into anxious loops. I think I'm unworthy. I have all those human things that I still am working on. But I've come to realize how much life is remembering our worthiness, remembering the power of staying in the present, and then completely forgetting and screwing it up and being messy and then allowing yourself to remember again. So I hope that you all can take these thoughts, these ideas as things to work with, pieces that might resonate with you. Anything that really doesn't, you don't need to deal with it today. Let it float to the side. So I start with a little dropping in, then I'll be giving a lecture, and then at the end we can all talk. So yeah, just taking a moment with your eyes open and with your eyes on me to come into the now. Allow yourself to see me. See the projections you have about me, what your mind is telling you about who I might be, what I might have to say, things you like, things that rub you the wrong way. Just seeing it. And as it's telling you those stories, notice those are stories. Those are projections based on past experiences you've had. And some of it might be true. And some of it is your mind creating a story in the present based on the past. So now take a moment to look inward. You can close your eyes. As you find your mind trying to look for how it sees you, how you're used to seeing yourself, the familiar feelings of little rushes of anxiety in your belly, the feeling of your breath, and try to see it as it is now. Try to notice the part of your mind that says, this is who I am, this is who I want to be, this is how I'm going to show up. Just allow yourself to see yourself anew in this moment. Remind your mind that it's a powerful tool you appreciate so much, but in this moment, your mind can relax. In this moment, the thoughts can move to the side. Reminding your mind that when we let those stories move to the side, we can see more clearly. When we stop looking for what we expect, we can truly see what is. And as I speak today, noticing the way my ideas might trigger you, both good and bad. And as it comes up, let those thoughts drift to the side. Try to stay present. Because I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey. And so as I speak today, I would like your presence, if possible, to exist as on an ever-cresting wave, allowing yourself as much as is possible to be in the present as the words wash over you, as the feelings that the words evoke wash over you. Just allowing yourself to ride that wave without needing to think too far ahead to put it all together, thinking back to what I just said, thinking about how this applies to your life. Try in this moment as an exercise to just have an embodied experience of hearing me, seeing me as clearly as you can. So this consciousness space that I have just welcomed you all to is just a glimpse of what I'm going to be talking about today, about the ways that consciousness is evolving to allow us to exist in seeing more clearly, awakening to the many ways that we project and are looking for things and missing what's there, both within ourselves and within others. There's some more space over here in the shade to get there. Okay. So here we are. This talk today is called Love and Psychedelics, and it's about how the psychedelic renaissance is fueling the evolution of consciousness and changing the face of modern love. I'm going to go through many little twisty turns around what that means to me, and at the end we can all share what that means to you. The human mind is in the midst of a system-wide operating system upgrade. We're noticing shifting attitudes around mental health, psychedelics, things that 10 years ago were taboo are now part of our culture in an open way. Psychedelics are fueling this shift in consciousness on individual and collective levels. And this is especially true when we take the time to do the work of integrating the experiences that we've had. And that's a lot of what I'm talking about today, and my mission more recently is really to just move beyond just the ingestion and what is the point of the ingestion. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's freedom, all those things, and sometimes when it's about really wanting to understand yourself and go deeper, how do you integrate that consciousness shift? Because that's what's happening. You're expanding what it means to be human. We are beginning to go beyond seeing ourselves as others as objects to fulfill extrinsically motivated goals. And one of the major ways this is happening is around self-awareness and introspection. Looking back, as consciousness has evolved, our parents were raised on criticism. Most of what motivated our parents, of course, I'm speaking in a lot of generalizations today, so you're just going to have to bear with me. But most of what our parents was motivated by was around, don't do that. You did that part wrong. This wasn't good enough. So, of course, this had some effects on our parents' self-esteem. It had effects on their ability to see themselves as worthy as humans beyond just meeting these goals of perfection. So, in all of the wisdom of humanity and how it swings the pendulum, our generation was raised on a whole lot of good jobs. We were not having it pointed out as much the ways that we were screwing things up. Sometimes, it always could creep in, but a lot of reinforcement of having met goals. We get a good job when we complete the thing. We get a good job when we become the thing that our parents wanted us to be, that society wanted us to be, that we've internalized as, this is what I'm supposed to be. Neither of these offer much space for intrinsic motivation and worth coming from the inside. So now, the pendulum is hopefully finding that space in the middle where we can want to achieve, enjoy the successes of achievement, but also not beat ourselves up when we fall short. And also getting rid of that internalized voice of not good enough, not good enough. It's passed down through words, it's passed down through the way our parents felt about themselves. Psychedelics offer fuel to this process by softening existing ego structures and supporting the creation of new narratives. I like to think of the psychedelic process in some ways as going from the ego is me, my thoughts, the way my mind is working, this is just me, into it's like a little friend on your shoulder, and seeing that part of your mind as a tool, a very important tool. but not me. Something I can work with, something that's sometimes working against me, but how can I get in better relationship with my ego mind to use it as a tool for what my values are asking for, what my authentic expression is needing. Creating new narratives from this new perspective is a key part of shifting our consciousness, moving forward. And this process can be achieved through many things: meditation, ecstatic dance, flow states, and especially intimate relationships. Intimate relationships can be many things. You know, there's some maybe focus at times in this about more romantic intimate relationships, but it's not always that. Intimate relationship, as I'm defining it, is one where you feel safe to have that person be a mirror towards you, where there is that emotional safety that you can set your boundary and they can see that in you. They can reflect the ways that your actions, words might have hurt them, and you can take that in to work with. Not to just become what the other person wants, but to see it as another perspective on yourself. The ways that psychedelics give us multiple dimensions to explore our mind and ourselves. Intimate partnership is an even more powerful tool for this when we allow it to be. The Industrial Revolution and the rise of capitalism have created systems of consciousness that focus on objectifications and humans as tools. And this has been something that has been on the rise. And I think we are in a late stage capitalism now where many people are waking up and saying, is my entire value around what I can produce? Our parents, many of them are locked in because many of them were of prime adulthood during the 80s and 90s when capitalism was exciting and thriving. And there was a lot of ideas around the meaning of life being making money, being successful. So for that generation to now begin to open up and look back and say, maybe we didn't know as much as we did. Maybe there's something more to this, is scary. But I think our generation is really ready for this. And I'm hoping that this consciousness revolution is going to help to dismantle those systems on many levels. Because what's existing inside of us is often mirrored in our family, in our community, in our society as a whole. And there's many different ways to try to dismantle this system, but there's one that we can do on our own every day, and that is opening up ourselves, to those around us, finding new ways to understand and to love and to live a life of compassion. Don't always get it right, but we just keep trying. So the psychedelic renaissance can be a relational catalyst if we allow it to be. It can supercharge our ability to understand the psyche and to evolve. And one of the ways that psychedelics can really support this, and I'm saying psychedelics, but we could also, anytime I'm saying that, it could be any type of meditation practice, ecstatic dance, anything that starts to turn down the default mode network. The default mode network is those thoughts, those stories, those narratives, just those general schemas that exist within us that keep us locked in. You know, we can go through life just in default, and then we take some medicine and oh my goodness, we're back to the mind of a child, right? We see everything anew and it's so exciting, and we can't live like that all the time. We need the default mode network. It's a beautiful tool in our mind. But all of these parts of our mind are tools to be used and to understood and not to become slaves to. And meditative practices, psychedelics, allow us to witness this part of our mind, to pull out, like I'm saying, not being here, having it here. And when we can witness it, it softens. It's not something we need to be ashamed of or tied to. This new consciousness is about, in my perspective, very much about compassion, and compassion for self and others. And some more perspective. How much we all talk about self-love. That wasn't even a thing. I don't think our parents even had this concept of self-love. And if they did, I don't think they would know what it means. amongst our generation, a lot of people just, oh, okay, it's my skincare, it's my bubble bath, and yes to skincare, yes to bubble baths. And self-love is also so much deeper, and it's the way that we show up for ourselves, show up in relationship to others, and allow our authentic selves to be witnessed in those ways. The idea of love as being important is kind of the cliche. We all know the story of the person who goes on the psychedelic journey and comes back and they couldn't figure it out. It's all about love. And we've all felt that. And we've remembered how true it is. And then we forgot. So, today I'm just hoping we can just all remember together. And we'll forget again, we'll remember. There's many ideas of what love means. In one of the most profound forms, it's the experience of non-duality, unicity. Non-duality, many different ways to describe it. The way I'm speaking of it here is just that deep sense of connection, that deep sense of what affects me, affects you, what affects you, affects me. And if we were all truly embodying that, I think that some of the things that are happening in the world would not be possible. Because we are a biosphere in our intimate relationships, in our families, our societies, our world. And to think that we can do pain in one part to heal another part, it's complicated. So this compassion we have for ourselves is reflected in compassion for others. The compassion we lack in others is reflected in the compassion we lack for ourselves. You all know the code. When you're judging something in somebody else, probably it's something you judge in yourself. And how can we look inside and find those deeper levels of compassion, use those triggers to heal ourselves. The more we can love others, the more we can love ourselves. That means finding shadows, finding the golden shadows, which is one that many of us are enjoying. Those parts of us that we shut down because at some point we decided that's no good. And then we find it, and in there is, some little hidden talent, some beautiful part of us, some open-heartedness that was hidden away. Our projections, our defenses, how much of the way that we exist is defending against something? How much of the way we exist is moving towards an affective experience that feels exciting, fun, or better, and moving away from the ones that feel painful? And we're also shifting what pain is. I think that past generations really viewed pain as something to be avoided. From an evolutionary perspective, if your life is in more survival mode, you do need to go away from pain. But the pain that we are feeling now is, of course, there's many people with legitimate pains, but much of what we in our everyday lives are avoiding is just pain of existence, pain of our feelings, and realizing how we can open into that part of ourselves. And we don't need to fear it in the same way. It's not going to kill us. But I think we all know the feeling of this pain is going to kill me. This pain is going to sink me into a well and I'll never be able to get out. And it's certainly something to do with support if you're going to go deep into that well, but also trusting that as you allow yourself to sink into the painful parts, you're opening and expanding into a broader range of emotional experiences. The more we can feel those negatively valued pain experiences, the more we can feel the true expression of the positively valued. Because there's not that little sneaky part telling us we're no good and not deserving of those beautiful things. And the more we can attend to those little parts that say, I'm not worthy of this love, I'm not worthy of this happiness, the more truly we get to experience it. A lot of this is about moving beyond the objectification of the self and other and waking up to our humanness. As I was saying, the capitalism really says you are a tool for this system of productivity. And that's been very much mirrored in relationships. Look back 100 years ago, what were relationships about? Was it about love, deepening your self-awareness? I'm sure there were some, but much of it was transactional. Much of it was about social rising, financial security, fitting into what you expected that you're supposed to be, hitting those milestones. We grew up on a traditional Disney idea of love. We grew up on this idea that you can see somebody and they can look in your eyes for 5 seconds, and you figured it out. This is the one, and you're gonna marry them, and you're gonna live happily ever after. So we grew up with that as a goal, as something to aspire to. And then I think many of us have had those experiences and said, this is wonderfully fun, and the story ends a little different in real life. So as relationships have evolved, we've moved out of women being property. It wasn't until the 70s that women could have their own bank accounts. Consider that and feel that, how that affected the ways that we could shift from relationship to relationship, the ways that we could, especially as women, be able to say, this relationship is no longer healthy for me, this is no longer serving me, this is no longer supporting my evolution, if you can't even get your own bank account. And that also affected that men were seen as protectors and providers. And of course I'm speaking in generalized gender norms in this, but it's for much of our evolution that was where things were landing. And men were seen as they needed to be strong, protectors, financially taking care, and not as a partner to support and evolve, to hold space for emotion. Remembering how recent these values were collectively held can show us the accepted objectification of the self and others. We weren't there as humans to be seen, to be witnessed fully. We were there in a transactional capacity. So we've come a long way. Self-actualization was not a focus of relationships. It was just about meeting those goals. But evolving systems of equality are decreasing the need to stay in relationships that don't fit and unfulfilling partnerships. The engine of capitalism, there's a belief that we must earn the right to exist through productivity. And I feel that. How much within ourselves do we see our value as what we've produced? And it's fun. We love to look through our day and say, look at all the things I did. And it's not part of being human, but it's not where our deepest value lies. Capitalist societies value dominance and aggression over exploring fear and vulnerability. And that hyper-productivity mindset that's key in capitalist systems is very much holding us back from intrinsic worth. We can get stuck on a wheel of striving and lack. So many of us, so many adults I work with and know, and myself sometimes, can get really focused on trying to achieve. And who are we trying to achieve for? Is it for ourselves? Or often it's for our mommy and our daddy that still exists within us. Our boss becomes the stand-in for that. Our partner becomes the stand-in for that, trying to be seen as valuable. We're moving beyond the myth, the archetypal myth of self-fulfillment being extracted through higher education, marriage, children, and home ownership. And we are moving into remembering we are human beings, not human beings. So how I understand this and what's brought us to this. I think, we like to sometimes, as I'm saying this, and then we start to, what do we do? Oh, that's right. Why am I doing that to myself? Oh, and we can just start flip-flopping, blaming ourselves more. Why have I not evolved more? Which again, every time that little voice comes in, that is that capitalist mindset. That is that productivity idea that I'm supposed to have hit this milestone. But if nothing else, I hope that you leave today with an idea that is, we've come so far. In the past generations, we've come so far. And that this drive within ourselves towards individualism is very much by design. I have a belief that we are non-dual beings here having an experience of duality. The way that I think of it is we're born out of a womb, out of oneness. Non-duality in some ways. Where do we come from before that? I'm not sure. We're born into the world, and it's a slow progression of realizing our separateness. The baby does not feel that separateness, that duality. They still feel one with the mother. And then as they evolve, they start to have experiences of seeing the mother as separate, seeing her as an object. The breast is an object to fulfill needs. And the duality begins to unfold. The 3-year-old child that says no and runs away from the parent with the excitement of feeling the experience of duality. The teenager that rebels. Everything that you say I should do, I will do the opposite. This is the joy of duality. And we keep going and finding all the ways that we're separate. And in our relationships, we fear the oneness. We feel it, and it terrifies us. We pull back into duality. I'm separate. I don't need to do what you want me to do. I don't need to attend to your feelings. I'm separate. And again, we can hear this and go, oh, I do that. What's wrong with me? Why do I have the drive towards duality? But it's part of this experience. We are here to experience duality. And then, for our generation, many of us are starting to peek our head outside and say, wait a minute, this ego that I thought was me is on my shoulder. And I am separate. I am a human being in a body that's separate. But perhaps I'm more interconnected than I realize. And in this awakening process to the remembering of that non-dual state, we begin to have the softened edges of our ego, to be able to see our triggers not just as us, but as trails to follow. Because each of those triggers goes back to a time when we were closer to that non-dual space, when we were closer to remembering the interwoven connectedness of it all. And as you find those triggers in yourself, you notice the freedom that comes. The freedom that comes from seeing these parts of yourself, pulling back that little repressed child within you and bringing them into the mix, allowing them to be loved, reconsolidating the parts that were stolen by the mind, by shame. Projections. All right, before projections, we go back. So why does our mind do this? Our mind is a schema-making machine. From that time of when you're a baby, your mind creates schemas. When I see this, I expect this. This is what I know to be true in this. When the ground is here, the ground stays here. When somebody looks at me like that, this is what it usually means. We have to. Because if we didn't, we would be walking around like we're high on mushrooms all the time. Like we're in the mind of a child where everything is new. And that's beautiful. And that's amazing. And we often like to taste that space. But we couldn't go through life and get done what we need to get done. So we create schemas. And many of these are unconscious. Many of them are solidified in childhood without us even knowing. They're the ways that our parents show us what it is to be human, what it is to be in relationship. And we just accept it as is. So this part of our mind that wants to create the schemas is a beautiful, beautiful tool that allows us to not be distracted by every little thing. It allows us to just hold certain realities and truths. But the problem is, it's based on our projections of the future, which come from past data. The data we collect in our lives, consciously and unconsciously, is input into this human computer machine, and the system that it's functioning on is going to project what might happen in the present and what might happen in the future based on that data. We tend to think of projections as something to be embarrassed by, self-conscious about. But when we can find the gentleness to remember that this is just based on the data that we collected, it can help us to loosen that and begin to rewrite those schemas and those narratives from our current space of being. No longer looking based on that past data that was unconsciously holding us there. Instead, seeing more clearly what's happening in the now. So projections are very necessary. They keep us safe. It says, when that happened before, this happened. When I go down this type of situation, this is what might happen. Thank you, projections. Thank you, mind. And this is the attitude that really helps, is these parts of our human software, meeting them with grace. Thanking them for the ways that they protected us. The defenses that developed unconscious in childhood were to keep us safe. The defenses that stop us from opening our heart more are to keep us safe from the fear of abandonment, of pain. But when we can see those through a conscious lens, we can see them as projections. We can see them as the lenses that are clouding our view. We can look beyond them. And we can write new narratives that are in alignment with our values. Relationships help us to wipe clean the mirrors of these projections and to access our authentic self. It's very difficult to see your projections on your own, because your mind is programmed to believe this is, not this is an option, not this is something that I can think of multiple perspectives on, just this is. So the experiences we have that begin to show us that these are options, these are many different ways of seeing myself. This part of me can be true and this part of me can be true. It clears it. When you have somebody that trusts you to say, wow, it seemed like you thought I was attacking you there, but I wasn't, to go through those experiences, to have those types of authentic relating moments where you can reality test. You weren't trying to attack me. You weren't trying to hurt me, but I felt pain. I felt embarrassed. So you must have been wanting to hurt me. And that person that you trust can say, that was not my intention. And that person that you trust can see that child part of you that's in pain, that child part of you that is still connected into that trigger from a time when you felt you weren't enough. And honor it and love it. And when you want to hate it, they're not going to hate it. To hold it, to help you to clear the lenses of projection, to move into a more clear objective view. And we can never be fully objective. Is there objective reality? I'm not so sure if that can be viewed through the eyes of a human, but a more objective reality. A reality that has multiple dimensions, not just being so colored by these unconscious projections. So it's just a mirror. It's the mirror. I mean, what do I do in therapy? What do we do in relationships when we can? Can I hold a mirror to you here? Can I hold a mirror to you here? When you see this part of yourself, what do you see? And it's not seeing ourselves not just from the inside, but from the outside, from this perspective, It can allow us to hold a more solid inner place for ourselves. One of the things that really can create a lot of blocks around this, around our ability to love, around our ability to feel positively valued emotions, is the shame that develops in childhood. And this is something that I like to try to normalize by realizing how much the child mind comes from a narcissistic space. Many of us have an experience often around the age of 7. 7 is a time when the mind moves a bit out of abstraction, a bit more into the schema making machine in some ways has kind of hit a tipping point. 7 is traditionally the age when children are ready for academics, things like that. And many of us at that age felt a duality, felt a separateness, pulled away from our parents. And of course it can happen at many times, but 7 is very common. And there's often an experience from around that age where shame was encoded around it. There's often an experience where something happened in the outside world that we internally and privately attributed to some fault or some unworthiness in ourselves. And shame developed. The child has a narcissistic view of things being because of them. Many of us still have that, and at times when we're stressed, it's easy to. In times when we're feeling unworthy, it's easy to say, that person is having that experience because of me. But in this child mind, especially around that age of 7, everything is that. Your parents are fighting, it's because of me. It's because of me. And that deep shame that builds in that we can't even tell anyone. Because how horrible to admit, I did this thing. I made this thing happen in the world. And so we hold it there. And in that is a sense of unworthiness, a sense of unlovability. And I think it's really important for us to acknowledge that a big part of being human is having that little place inside that feels unlovable, that feels unworthy. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't have a little bit of it. And I think there's a lot of people going around living their lives trying to pretend it's not there, trying to push it away, trying to prove worthiness through action, achievement, through posturing, but all the while fearing the truth that we are unlovable, we are unworthy. I'm not immune to this. It's something I've worked with very deeply in myself and continue to find places where it's holding me back. And in many ways, it is what connects us. It is that emptiness within. It connects all humans. So, as we hold these realities, humanness, destigmatize projections, destigmatize feelings of unworthiness, unlovability, destigmatize the shame that developed just because we were a child and our mind told us we were the cause. We can begin to unravel these in places that feel safe. Deep, intimate relationship can be a space for this. I do not recommend doing this type of work with somebody who has not proven themselves worthy of holding these parts of yourself. There's a lot of talk in the world about not being judgmental. It's important to realize that if judgment is one thing, judgment comes from ego. Discernment comes from truth. And not everyone is worthy of your deepest truth. Not everyone is worthy of your deepest intimacy and vulnerabilities, and not everyone is worthy of hearing the stories of your shame. Because when you let those parts of you out, you are beginning to manifest a reality where you don't believe them to be true. And if they are met with love and openness and compassion, they'll begin to dissolve. They'll begin to not be you, but to be a part of you. Safety, discernment, intimacy. Because also we're trusting these people in our lives to be a clear mirror. And if they're telling us things about ourselves based on their own judgment and their own insecurity, and we're trusting them, that's getting further reinforced in us. It's going to cloud our lens even more. So walking this path of awakening through seeing, this path of awakening through not just looking for what the data told you to project, but truly seeing. It's a beautiful way to use our connections to others, to move beyond the people we meet being seen as sexual objects, being seen as a person to help us get our next job, a person to have children with so we can fulfill that desire, but as people to connect with, people to mirror back our existence. From that space, these other types of connections that are beautiful parts of being human can exist in a more authentic space. And I mean, hey, we don't need to give it up completely. It's not about that we have to have every moment be seeing every person for their full humanity, because again, that's like being the child walking through the forest where every flower you need to stop and every leaf you need to celebrate. But noticing it in ourselves, noticing the tool of sometimes allowing people to be in transactional relationships, but also the tool of deeply seeing the humanity in others and in ourselves. There is a Sufi idea that projections never go away, but that we can begin to see them more clearly. And I think this is really important because, again, how easy is it for us to beat up on ourselves? I'm doing that thing again. I'm in that same type of relationship. I had that same reaction. We're human. And we've come so far from the generations that didn't even know what self-love was, that didn't even know what introspection was, didn't know what triggers were. And look at how far we've come. But the piece that's still lingering within us, that's holding us back in many ways, is the capitalist consciousness that's ingrained in us, is that productivity mindset, is again applying our own ascension, our own evolution to that paradigm. I'll be worthy when I. It's not true. It's not true. The scary thing is, and the reason why many of us hold back on love, hold back on seeing others deeply, is that means then we have to acknowledge the ways that our presence is affecting others. The ways we treat others is affecting their humanity. The ways we treat our partners is affecting their ability to come out of their unworthiness, their unlovability, their ability to see themselves as more than objects. And that's a lot to hold. And we need to hold that it's scary. Because if this was easy, we would have all already done it. To accept the depth of the humanity of the people around us, to accept the depth of our own humanity. It's a lot. It's something we can allow in moments. And also even just acknowledging to ourselves when we're in a moment of objectifying ourselves or others, when we are presenting ourselves as an object or transaction. Sometimes we're gonna. Sometimes the same from somebody else. We're gonna go into a restaurant and that person is going to bring us a drink, and it is a transactional experience. And can we acknowledge that? Can we acknowledge the level of power we're bringing to that? Can we acknowledge this person is in a position where we are offering them money for a service? How is that affecting their humanity? Is that meaning that they have to laugh at our joke, even though they don't want to? Little things, little ways we can remember humanity. Little ways we can just bring it into our day. So, all of this is, I'm so glad you all have been here. It's so beautiful. But what does this mean practically? Okay? I'm giving you some ideas of how to reformulate, to shift the way that you see yourself, the way you see others, to have grace as you meet yourself with your triggers and your projections and your messiness, and you're doing the same thing again and again and again. What I'm talking about is how to cultivate a deeper self-love and self-respect. Because when we forget our humanity and forget the humanity of others, we're moving away from that. When we move into caring for ourselves, there's so many practical, simple things that do remind us of our worthiness. Self-care, living in integrity. When we say we're going to do something, we do it. When we share from a space of truth. When we don't need to share, we don't share. Creating space for that authentic expression. Loving difficult parts of ourselves. And trying to not be as dependent on the ways that others perceive us. These are ways to ground this in, to anchor it in. Previous models of love that many of us are existing in we're more codependent. We live in a world where what somebody thinks of me is my value. You know, it's what I achieve, what I have, what people think of me. This is how I know my worthiness. But moving beyond that, seeing the worthiness in others and seeing it in ourselves. As we evolve, we're creating new norms, new expectations, new ways to show up. You know, now there is such an awareness of authentic relationship, nonviolent communication, things like this. These are new ways that are coming online that are the expectations, but always also allowing space to evolve in how we show up for ourselves, the way we view ourselves. But with a commitment to our caring for ourselves and others, and trusting that the deeper we allow that caring, the deeper the compassion will exist. And like I said in the beginning, the remembering and the forgetting, and the remembering and the forgetting, and not beating ourselves up when we forget. Locking in, trying to prove, well, there was a reason I did it, and it made perfect sense, and okay, yes, of course. And can we soften? So in my conclusion, the Industrial Revolution, capitalism, objectification of self and other, transactional relationships, all of these cloud our view of reality. All of these have created lenses we've been unable to see as lenses. We've just thought of as what is. The deep internal work that psychedelics can fuel can also be done without psychedelics, but it ultimately helps us to find more clarity from the veil of subjectivity. Helps us to find clarity that our projections are projections based on very good data from the past, but that we have collected new data, and it's time to rework those. A deeper compassion we feel for ourselves will be mirrored out those we're in relationship with. And trusting in that. When I care for myself, I'm caring for you. When I care for you, I'm caring for me. Moves us into not seeing others as a way to complete ourselves, as a way to improve our productivity, to help us fit the milestones, but as a space to connect. Accepting the inherent wholeness and perfection within the self and others. Helps us to move into a place of connection born out of gratitude and abundance rather than out of lack, striving. And to close, a quote by Carl Jung: the best political, social, and spiritual work we can do is to withdraw the projection of our shadow onto others. Thank you guys. You all were so nice to be with here. I love, it's every group I do these talks with. There's just so much I get from just seeing everyone's faces and the recognition and the presence. And I so appreciate you all reinforcing for me today that it's okay for me to take up a little space with my thoughts and ideas. And I hope that then it helps you all say, hey, I can take up space with mine too. So who has some thoughts, reflections, ideas, brief stories that don't go too much into your own trauma but could share a human commonality that you would like to take up some space with today? Yes?
I have a question.
Yeah.
The first thing, I was late a little bit, so I didn't hear your name.
Leah O'Donnell. Yes.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for your lecture.
Yes.
So the question is, you talked about Catholicism, and I really relate to some of the ideas you mentioned. But sometimes in my personal experience, very hard to distinguish this commodified infinite self-improvement cycle from the real authentic experience. Do you have any indicators or questions you can ask yourself whether this experience is really authentic or not?
I mean, the one that I use is just the most general. I work with a lot of people that have a lot of hyperproductivity mindset, and is if I don't hit this milestone, will I feel like a failure? Will I attack myself? Because there's nothing wrong with wanting to evolve and achieve and do all of the juicy things in life. But when I don't hit it, do I self-attack? You know? And so finding that softening and that peace to have it, like I'm saying, coming out of a space of abundance and gratitude and just like wanting to live rather than needing that to feel worthy of living. Thank you. Klaus.
So what plant medicines do you use with your clients?
I primarily work with ketamine. I sometimes do other medicines privately. I have a lot of my own experience with that. I've done a lot of ceremonial work and just really trying to understand the ways these medicines have been used for so long, and also evolving that into this modern container of our Western mind that is very much attached to the ego, and how do we shift out of that? But I mean, I think, like I said in the beginning, ingestion of medicines can be super fun and can be super transformational and can become a loop of sensation seeking. Any tool that we're using on our spiritual awakening can also become a place that we're stuck. And if we're continuing to find that peak experience and that feeling, the affective feeling of having it all figured out, but then we can't integrate that into our life, that's a sign that what we're needing to do is refocus on the consciousness shift that is the intention of the usage. Anybody else? Thoughts? I mean, you can share little stories from your life. I just always like to say it like we don't need this isn't necessarily a container to have a huge trauma share, but if there's something that's, yeah, please.
Sometimes it's hard to kind of balance the reality of being
Can you talk a little louder?
sometimes it's hard to balance like the reality of being authentic to yourself,
Yeah.
but also giving into the capitalistic regime and the schemas we've gone up, especially as an immigrant where you have to work reckless I am and believe it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how one balances what do order goes,
Yeah.
because sometimes the way the bad can be.
That's a great question, because the reality is we all have personas that we're going to use, because those personas are like containers for ourselves. That is how we exist in different places, and we need that. Like, we need the default mode network. And can we notice when we're in this persona? Can we notice when we're choosing to do something that is out of a transactional nature? And that's not wrong and bad, But just having that awareness in ourselves can help to stop to have it be such an objectification of self-other. You know, and the ego wants to be, it wants to know, wants to believe it really has figured things out. It wants to achieve and have all of these external milestones. But so just riding that, I think it's a practice. It's an ongoing thing. And you're going to have days where you were like, oh, I thought I was being authentic, but like actually I was just trying to get approval from my daddy again, you know? Like, yeah. I'm not sure if that's nice. Yeah.
I think I have some trouble with,
Sorry.
I think I have some trouble with like love and self-love and acceptance and like complacency. Like I think it's hard for me sometimes to be like, if I accept this part of me, I'm not gonna like be really motivated to like, change it in a really big way, you know? Like, oof.
Yes.
Like,
Did you all hear what she said?
Okay.
That,
sorry.
that about if she said if I accept this part of me, then I'm going to be complacent to not want to change it. And like this is some hot tea right here. Because also that's what our parents were trying to teach us. They are trying, you know, when they're critical of us, they're trying to be like, don't let yourself just be that. Don't be what I was, you know. And it comes off in ways that we don't like so much, very often, and it hurts. But they're trying to prevent us from going into what they did, and it's a wavy line to walk. But how, you know, the more that we can cultivate that inside space of I care for myself, I take care of myself, I feed myself, I rest, I just maintain my humanness, I live in integrity of doing what I say I'm going to do. You know, that I think can help us have a more solid internal container to not blow in the wind so much around what others want from us. And also just knowing when we're using it as a tool. That part of me that, oh, I'm gonna play this little game with myself and I'm gonna achieve this thing. You know, I'm gonna fold that whole pile of laundry. I'm gonna do it. You know, and using that with our psychology, but not having it just be like our everything and our overgeneralized way of functioning. It is. Yeah, I'll take another question. Yeah, it's 3:00, so we'll just end with this.
I just wanted to say that in my journey of self-love, I realized that deep down inside of the self-love is the motivation to do things that you need to do.
Woo!
I mean,
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Then it comes out of abundance.
You fear that if you
Yes.
love yourself, you will give up and lay down and die.
Oof.
Like, but that's not what it is. There's
Yes.
more. There's always more.
And
Yes.
you stop doing the things that you shouldn't be doing because and you're wasting your time on.
Yes.
Because you're not to improve that part, you know? So you have time for that crap.
Yes. Not trying to constantly, that's the thing is the more you sink into your own self-love, your authentic voice just comes through because your ego is not